Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Night Vision. If this is your first time here, I'm hoping that it won't be your last. We talk about all kinds of mysterious things, alternative history, the paranormal, UFOs, hauntings, you name it, and we try to get into it here and break it down for you. Tonight we got a really interesting guest that I recently met. I'm coming to you tonight from the Languedoc-Roussillon region of France, the Aude department, and met up with a friend of a friend over here who happens to live just down the road in Carcassonne. And he is known best for his work in paranormal investigations, at least to our audience, with his paranormal investigations. And he assists actual exorcists in helping to investigate and to clear dark spirits, dark entities, whatever they are, we're going to find out. But I want to first bring on Joe Thompson, our special guest for tonight.
Hi, Joe. Renee, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
We have some nice weather today.
I had absolutely horribly windy weather, just 45 minutes from you.
Well, you know what? It was
blowing like crazy.
I went out with a friend and did some shopping and things. And I've got a tour group coming in on Sunday. So we were getting last minute supplies. And when we went out, it was so nice and warm. But by the time, we'd been out for a couple of hours, the wind had started to come in. And I mean, it just blew my hair off my head. And then I was glad that I actually brought a jacket along because my friend was saying, "Oh, I don't think you'll need that." I said, "You know what? You never know here. The weather can just change on a dime." So as it turned out, we needed our jackets. But it was nice.
It sounds like ghosts howling around the house here. It's just wind is just whipping like crazy.
Yeah. Now, I'm really curious, and for those who may not know your work, how in the world did you first get into the paranormal investigations and knowing that you sort of had something that might be helpful to people?
Well, it first started an interest back when I was in third grade in Norwood, Colorado. My grandmother lived right across the street from the school. And every day at lunchtime, I'd just mosey across the street. It's like we had no traffic anyway. So I'd mosey across the street and we'd make lunch and talk, have great conversations. And a lot of the talk was about ghosts, the other side, spirits, hauntings. We talked a lot. She had some very close Native American friends who we talked a lot about what she had learned from their experiences. We used to go searching for petroglyphs and pictographs and things like that in the desert and down south from where we were. Go cave exploring, looking for petroglyphs and things like that. It was just great. And it seemed like every day when we were making lunch, we would be talking about ghosts, we'd be talking about ancestors, we'd be talking about all sorts of things. And that just started an interest with me. And we were there for 5 or 6 years. And this whole time we'd been talking. Then I kind of got away from it because I was busy doing things. When I joined the Navy, I got stationed over in Gaeta, Italy, which is a couple hours by train, a few hours by train from here. And I was downstairs having a smoke. I used to smoke, and we, my neighbor from right downstairs below me was out there smoking as well. And I asked him, "Do you think that old building over there's got ghosts in it?" And he said, "Oh, you like ghosts?" I said, "Yes, yeah, I'm kind of interested." He goes, "Oh, you should go with us." So I said, "Oh, Saturday." He was part of the Carabinieri, which is the Italian state police, pretty high up, kind of almost an official. So I said, "Well, that's really cool."
Oh.
So we took his car and 5 or 6 people, and we went to this small castle to the north of where we were, and walked up. He knocked on the door, flashed his badge, and said, "We're here to investigate." And he hadn't made any prior notifications or anything to anybody. He just flashed his badge, and off we went in. I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So that was kind of uncomfortable. But we investigated, and I had an old cassette tape recorder, a flashlight, and my film camera, and that's all I had. And went around and did stuff. It was a lot of fun. And when we were done, it's like, when are we doing this again? I was hooked. That was all there was to it. And then, of course, the Navy.
Did you come across anything on that time? Did you?
I knew that there was a few things around, but I didn't know what to look for. I really didn't know much of anything. I didn't really know what I was doing investigation wise. I had never done it before. This was my first real investigation.
When did you first start to feel stuff? When you go into a place.
It was 5 or 6 years after that. For some reason, I just started noticing things, and I had been on a few more investigations, so my mind was more open to that, to paranormal stuff. I was kind of looking for it now. That first night, I didn't know what to look for, what to feel, what to do, anything. So it was a number of years after that, 4 or 5 years after that first experience, and I'd walk into a place and oh, that's kind of interesting. Of course, I got out of the Navy in '96 and I got a job, and I flew to Puerto Rico a lot to do some work down there. And there were some places like one of the castles out on one of the forts on the edge of San Juan. Go out there and you walk around the place and you could feel there's stuff there. It was great. You could just feel a buzz that there was something there.
Yeah.
It was.
I've heard people like that have gone to some of the death camps in Germany and Poland and
Right.
around, and they said that it was palpable. You could just feel it.
This is true.
But but they didn't have any particular skill. But I know you sort of have something extra going on.
There seems to be, yeah. I had been to Dachau several years before that. I was in high school, and we had wound up at Dachau walking around, and I remember feeling eerie things there, but I didn't attribute it to anything other than just the feeling of the place. It's the concentration camps like that are just horrible feeling places, and what was going on. And you walk into the museum, and there's books bound with human skin and lampshades made of human skin and stuff, and you're just like, oh my God. And you just get that horrible feeling all over. And I just attributed it to that when I was there. So
right. You already knew something horrible had happened there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. I know in Puerto Rico, there was a lot of stuff that went on because I went there quite often. A lot of places in Virginia I'd go to also. I was working in Virginia at the time, and I'd go lots of places there. And some of the buildings I went to were very old, and I started going, oh, yeah, I guess I better keep my eyes open for some of this stuff and start looking and doing my own investigations like I did that time in Italy. And so then I started. And in 2000, I had worked with a few other groups, and in 2000, I started my own group out of California called Pacific Coast Paranormal Investigators. And from that point on, we were investigating every weekend. We'd go places. If nobody needed help, we'd be out doing stuff, and that's when I got involved in the darker stuff. I contacted Ron Fale, Archbishop Ron Fale, and talked to him and found out he was just 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road from where I was living. So it was like, hey, I'd like to join your group and start getting involved in exorcisms and doing assistance for exorcisms and things like that. So we met up, chatted for a while. I got my go.
What made you want to do that? I mean, gosh.
I remember
run for the hills.
I remember sitting at work one day and I don't know what it was. Something I was trying to come up with a story. I write as well, so I was trying to come up with a short story, and I thought, well, let's see. Okay, so we've got an old building with lots of ghosts in it. We've got there's an old lady living there, and she wants the place cleared out, kind of. So I guess we need an exorcism. So I tried to figure out how to do that. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything at all about exorcisms. So then I started looking around if there was any place in the area that did that. And Ron Fales' organization, Order of Exorcists, was right there. And I said, wow, that is kind of interesting. So that's when I contacted him and started doing stuff like that. It took a little bit of time to figure out what their procedures were and how they needed things done. And, the 60 questions that you ask, filming, everything is filmed, everything is done. Notes are taken very diligently. And then you submit everything that you gather and submit it to them. And then they go through it and decide whether or not it's a real case or not. You have to do an investigation, the whole 9 yards. And then they'll decide whether it's a real investigation, whether they're going to help the people or not.
Oh.
And usually, if you do come up with something, you've got enough evidence to submit it, they're going to do something about it. So that's always good. Of course, the people have to, the victim of the demonic attack or possession or whatever has to be willing to do physical and mental testing, to make sure that there's nothing there that can, because you go and you start doing exorcisms and they're not mentally capable of doing it. And that's what's causing the issue. You can cause a lot more trouble. You can also get in a lot of trouble for doing that stuff.
Right.
So you've kind of got to be very careful and do the physical and mental evaluations, have them done by competent doctors.
Yeah. So you go through the questions and sort of gather evidence, and then you submit it. And then if they think, wait, that looks like something might be going on, then they do all the professional evaluations by doctors and mental health professionals.
Right. Or you get them and say, hey, I need you to do this before we do any of this. Get with the person and say, hey, we need you to do the mentally and psychological evals, and then we can submit it. Sometimes it's like a bad issue, and the Order of Exorcists will then say, hey, you need to get this done. And it's coming from somebody other than me. It's the priest that's going to do the exorcism.
Right.
So
now, have there been cases where you go somewhere and there's something going on, and somebody needs help, but there's no exorcist, in the region? Or are you able to help people on your own?
I'm an ordained minister, so I can do a deliverance. Exorcism is a Catholic church name.
Right.
Exorcism is a Catholic word. So to do an exorcism, you've got to be a Catholic priest.
Yes.
But because I'm an ordained minister, I can always do a deliverance, which is basically the same thing. Using different words, using different stuff, but it's the same basic thing. So yes, in an emergency, I would certainly do that. In not an emergency case where there's not life and limb and things like that being threatened, I would probably look around for a priest, an exorcist that will do it. And then that way it's all taken care of. But deliverance works just as well as an exorcism. But don't tell the Catholic people I work with that I said that. They don't believe that.
And how many exorcists are there? I mean, they're not all over the place, are they? Or just every...
1, 2, 3. I know of 7 or 8. I know there's a lot of them out there. I personally know of 7 or 8 that I've talked to, worked with, things like that. I just got a brand new one up in Alaska because I'm working a case in Alaska, and he's the exorcist for the state. So I've been talking to him a little bit here and there, saying, "Hey, here's what the issue is," and he's going to go and meet with the person that needs the help. They're going to get together, and I'll hear about it later.
Right.
So we'll see what happens with that case. But
can you describe, you can pick any case you want, like weird things happening that you say, oh, wait a minute, something's going on here and it doesn't feel good. Are there things like poltergeist activity? Are there things that, are visual? Are there sounds? What kind of things have you experienced when you've been in a place that is, ooh, something's really bad here?
There's a few things. One case we did, which we never completed because the physical and mental evaluation was never completed. They refused to do it. And since the person was over 18, her parents couldn't force it. Nobody could say, hey, we need to do this. So she's off doing her own thing. As far as I know, she's still doing her thing, still being possessed, still being done. And that's the only possession that I've ever run across. I've had a few infestations, but with her sister was telling me all about the things that happened with her. Like when she walked into a church, she screamed and ran back out. She can't touch the church walls. There's a lot of things that she can't do with her family, like go to mass on Sunday, right? She can't do any of that because she can't go into the church. And that was a big worry for her sister, thinking something bad was going on. So we went out to do the interview, and then we were going to follow up the next weekend with a investigation in the house. And so we're there. We're doing the 60 questions. She has 5 or 6 family members standing in a kind of a semicircle behind her, and she's in a chair in front of me. And she's just a small little girl, 19 years old at the time, and 18 or 19, and just a little petite thing. And she's sitting there, and I'm asking the questions. And about halfway through the list, I got to the question, can you speak any languages that you're not supposed to be able to speak or that you shouldn't be able to speak? And she kind of started breathing a little differently, sort of hyperventilating a little bit. And all of a sudden her voice dropped a number of, about 2 or 3 octaves. So she was down like this now. And she jumps up and spreads her arm and stands up, and she starts speaking something. I didn't recognize the language at all, but it sounded like she was saying stuff in a chanting way. So she starts walking toward me. So her sister and a couple of her brothers grab around her waist, and they're holding her, and they're bigger people than she is. And she starts dragging them along behind her. And they're just sort of like scooching along a little bit on the floor. And she's coming up to me, and I'm just sitting here like this, watching her. And she comes up to where she's about, 6, 8 inches away from my face, and starts yelling at me, and spittle's hitting me in the face and the whole 9 yards. It was kind of interesting. So I'm just sitting here like this. And she, after a little while of yelling at me, she's just like, you could see her mind changing, her eyes flashing a little bit. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she goes back and sits down in her chair. And that was it. Nothing else happened that whole time. Just
and all that
from
time,
there went well.
All that time she was yelling in some language that she shouldn't be speaking.
Exactly. I didn't know what it was. And I took the recording of that, took her voice, and sent it off to a friend of mine at USC who's an anthropology instructor, professor, and said, hey, share this with some friends of yours, see what you can figure out. And I got, nobody knows what it is. Nobody has heard that before. Of course, if it was an ancient language, if that's what she was speaking, we don't know what they sound like. Nobody speaks those. Yeah. So, and that was what they told me. It sounds like a real language. It sounds like
Yeah.
the real thing. We just don't know what it is. I kept thinking Aramaic or something in my head, but nobody knows what they sound like. So
Right.
it was quite interesting. But
I mean, you hear about obviously people in charismatic churches
right.
speaking in tongues. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes. Speaking
What
in
is it?
tongues is speaking actual language. Okay. If you're speaking in tongues, you're speaking a language that's different from your own. Something other. Like if you're sitting here speaking Latin and you don't know
Right.
anything Latin,
Right.
that would be speaking in tongues. But
Mm-hmm.
sitting there mumbling and shouting just verbs and shouting, I mean, not verbs, but vowels and consonants and things, just making something up as you go. I don't think that's speaking in tongues because it's not a real tongue. Tongue is language.
Some people do just sound like they're like babbling and making it up as they go. It doesn't sound like a real language, but then sometimes they do.
And if they do, then it's more of a chance that they are actually speaking in tongues.
Do you think that there is an authentic thing that can happen in a religious situation?
Sure.
Where you and that can be a positive thing, or do you think that's negative?
Well, if they're speaking in tongues, what's causing it? Is God reaching his hand down, or somebody like that reaching a hand down, touching them on the forehead and said, okay, say this? Or are they possessed by something? Does something step in? Is it a spirit that steps in and goes, okay, here, we're going to do this. Let's see if we can mess with their heads or something, I don't know what causes it. It could be anything. But when they jump in and somebody's speaking something that sounds Greek or Romanian or something, and they speak deep South, deep South American, and they've never been exposed. Well, what do you think?
Yeah. That, I mean, you definitely think it's coming from somewhere, but is it a good place? I mean, it is mentioned in the Bible, the gift of tongues. So I would imagine, that was a thing that was taken positively back in the days when those books were written. But I just wondered if you had developed an opinion about, are they, sort of messing with something that maybe they shouldn't be, or are they truly being gifted with a special thing that comes straight from the divine?
Straight from the divine for a very short period of time while they're in the church, while they're standing in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's possible, I guess. Or they could be making up sounds that sounds like a language and trying to make everybody in the church go, ooh, that's impressive. Yeah, I don't know. What is the psychology of the person that's doing it? Are they just a normal grandma walking down the street and all of a sudden she's got, she's speaking in tongues? Or is it, oh yeah, I can really, really do something with this. It's so hard to say, and I'd like to talk to somebody that's happened with and be able to ask them some questions. What did you feel like? What do you got going on?
I can remember, years ago, I had a friend who was really religious, and she would speak in tongues, and I really felt like, got the dog right. Sorry, folks.
Such a cool dog too.
Yeah, that's Douglas. But it's I don't know. I know that she believed. She was not a liar. She was not a dishonest person. She was very sincere about her beliefs. And but the thing of it that always kind of puzzled me was like, what's the purpose of it if you don't know what you're saying?
Right.
And then I know some churches would have the person speaking in tongues, and another person would be the one to tell them what the meaning was.
Does that person speak that other language though?
Not.
No. So now there's two people in on it.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never seen it happen. I have seen people reacting to voices in their heads, and that's because they've been doing EVP work, electronic voice phenomenon work, on tape recorders, and they do it all the time. And pretty soon they go, "Oh, I don't even need this recorder anymore," and they set it down and they have the conversation with whoever was recording there in their head. Oh yeah, seen that a couple of times. There was a couple in California that happened with, and they. I don't even need this recorder anymore. They're telling me whatever I want to know. They're telling me, "Oh yeah, I'm your grandparent. I'm your father or whatever." And it's like, you don't need that recorder. I'll help you out. And yeah, we wound up doing exorcism on the property up there. I can do those. And we did the exorcism on the property up there and wiped out everything. So never heard from the guy afterwards. So, I'd call him and say, "Hey, what's going on?"
What was going on at their place?
It was more like there was something walking around the house, something in different rooms, different stuff. I had my friend Tim with me, who's clairaudient. He can hear the spirits. So he was good to have along with us because I hear him very, very seldomly, and if it's like directed exactly toward me and I can hear him then, but that happens so seldomly. Tim hears them all the time. He doesn't do investigations anymore. He's got nothing to do with the paranormal anymore because it was like freaking him out. He could hear voices all the time, and he said, "I can't do this anymore." So he shut it down and learned how to shut it down, and that was it. But we were walking around the house and blessing. While we were clearing the place, we were blessing and chasing everything out of there. And Tim went out and asked if he could go use the restroom just before we were leaving. We were packing up and everything. And he went into the restroom and the window was open in the restroom. So it's like, okay. So he goes in and he comes back out and he says, "Something touched me on my lower back while I was in there in the restroom." I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I don't know what it was." And he looked at me and he just collapsed on the floor right then. And I said, "Oh." So the guy and I got Tim out to my car, and he was breathing. He was responding to things, but he was just kind of like freaking out a little bit. And I said, "We need to get you away from here. We'll head down. I'll take him to the hospital in Hemet or whatever, and we'll see what we need to do." But halfway down the hill, he said, "Stop. I need to get out and vomit." Okay, great. So he got outside and wandered around a little bit. Nothing happened. So he said, "Okay, let's go." So we got back into the car. Drove down and said, you need to go to the hospital?" "No, I'll be good. I'll be good." And so we headed back toward my house in Riverside area. And he said, "Stop. So I pulled off on this other road off the highway, and he gets back there and he starts vomiting. This pink, thick foam was just coming out. I mean, it seemed like gallons and gallons and gallons of this stuff was coming out, but it was 10 minutes before we could get back in the car and we could head home. And it was just the weirdest thing. It was just,
How did he feel afterwards?
Well, he felt a little bit better, but he was still feeling like something was there. So, of course, my house is blessed. Every house I've ever lived in has been blessed to one end to the other, and crazy, crazy, crazy blessings. So different religions, different stuff all over the place, shaman, the whole 9 yards come in and I get them to bless everything. And I do it myself. So we get in there and we pull into my driveway and he's like, "Oh, good." And he goes in, raids my fridge, and starts eating like crazy because he was starving. But it was just a very interesting thing that we had going on.
When he came out and you said, he collapsed, what made him collapse? Did he faint? It
was kind of his eyes started to roll back in his head. I was sitting there looking at him, asking him, "Why do you look so strange?" I was trying to ask that question, and it looked like his eyes rolled back a little bit and he collapsed. And I went, "Oh, something's got him." So that's why we got him out of there. I needed to get him away from that location. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty scary to me. And so he's not doing it anymore, right?
No, he's not. Well, it took 3 or 4 more years after that.
Oh,
But
he still went ahead.
yeah. Oh, yeah, he
Oh,
still went ahead on a lot of cases, but finally he knew I was getting ready to move out of the Riverside area and I was going to Arizona. He said, "No, I'm not going to put up with this anymore." And he turned it all off and figured out how to turn it off. And that was it.
that's weird. Well, I have a friend, I think we've talked about, we each know someone named Heather that's a
Right.
medium. Anyway, my Heather, it's like she says that she had to learn how to turn it off. She's not hearing voices constantly or
Right.
anything. It's like she now sort of has to form the intention, I think, or, I'm not sure. Maybe if it's something really dire, she might get a message or something like that. But, it's too bad he couldn't just turn it off and on when he wanted to so that he could.
We tried to.
Didn't want to be in those.
Yeah, exactly. We tried to get him to do that. We tried to get him to where he could shut it off and then turn it on when he needed to, but it just never worked right. So even if he could dim it down a bit, it was still there. He'd still hear voices when he was trying to sleep, and it was driving him crazy. So he finally just gave it up completely and just stopped listening. And eventually they stopped talking.
Wow.
So. Yeah.
Now, do you ever have anything like that? Or is it more feelings and do you see things?
I used to not see much at all. That there would be an occasional flash of something, whatever. But I had a heart attack in June of 2016, and it happened during the night. I woke up the next morning and I had a hard time moving. I was very slow. I didn't know what happened really because I didn't feel any of it. I just woke up and was very lethargic. And during that week, I went to go see the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, your heart's dead. You've got 10% activity on your heart. So, yeah, you need to take it easy." So then I started working with cardiologists and things like that. And then in July, I had a massive heart attack, and I was at work. And I just sat down. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel it, but I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. And I'm just they're like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I can't breathe." And so they called the ambulance for me, and they took me to one hospital. And of course, Heather followed me because we worked together, so she knew it was happening. She knew what was going on, and so she followed in her car, and we got to the hospital in the emergency room, and they intubated me, and they were doing zaps to my chest to stop my heart from fibrillating, had me going crazy and all of that. Wow. So every time that I would lose it, basically I'd go to the other side. Heather would be there and she'd hear me, and I'd wake up and she'd be going, "Oh my God, what in the world?" So she was kind of laughing a little bit because I was so excited on the other side. And I don't remember any of it other than what she was telling me there going on. She's like, I said, "What?" But I was intubated, so I couldn't ask her. And she says, "Yeah, you were on the other side screaming, 'I need to go back. I've got to take care of my son. I've got things to do. I'm not ready yet. I got to go back. I got to go back." And every time I'd cross over, when my heart would start racing and I'd basically, there would be no blood flow going on anymore, I'd do it and she'd be screaming again. So eventually I woke up and my brother was there standing there next to Heather, and he had driven all the way in from Phoenix at lightning speeds, made it over there real quick. And I woke up and saw him, and Heather and he had been talking and things, of course, and my boss and my boss's boss were all there. And it was like, wow, it was like old friends week from work at the hospital. So that was quite interesting. And then they couldn't get my heart to stop speeding and going crazy. So they popped me in a helicopter and flew me across the mountain over to Loma Linda in California. and I went to Loma Linda, and they
Very
put me in
famous
there, and
art
yeah,
place. Yep.
yeah, and they got me all taken care of, and everything was good, and they put a defibrillator sling on me, so I had to wear this defibrillator all the time, and so I would go home for 2 weeks and start swelling up, pretty bad. I got to the point where breathing was difficult, so I'd go into the hospital, and they'd put me on stuff that would get all the liquids out of my body. And then I'd be there for about 2 weeks. And this went on a few times. And toward the end of August, beginning of September, I was getting ready to go home for my next round of sit around and do nothing, And the doctor said, "Nope, you're not going anywhere." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, we're going to put you on the heart transplant list, and we'll see what we can do about that." I said, "Okay, cool, let's do that." So September, we started with the testing. We started with all the stuff that was going on, and I needed to get X-rays and tests, blood tests, and all this done. And eventually, I got put on the transplant list. And November 7th, they put my new heart in. November 7th of 2016, and I was back to work on January 3rd. So that wasn't so bad. I was walking slow, and I was, I didn't have all that energy, but I was at work. I could sit there and type. I could, do what I needed to do. So that was kind of neat.
Now, do you know anything about your donor?
Yes, I do. I don't know names. I don't know anything. I do know that she was at home cooking, and she just collapsed. She had an aneurysm in her brain, and she collapsed.
Oh.
And we were almost a perfect match. So, and I'm so sorry that she. Pardon?
Do you know how old she was?
She was 22 years younger than me.
Oh my gosh, a very young person.
Yeah, she was in her 30s, I think.
You should have a good, 30s. Strong heart.
Yeah, she did. She did. Yeah. And I'm still kicking. I'm still going and adventuring and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So
now let me ask you, and I've heard this before from other, transplantees, that they started noticing like they liked something different, like a food or something like that. Have you noticed any differences that you have thought, maybe I'm getting this from this new heart?
The only changes that I've noticed, nothing having to do with food, because I like everything. So, I mean, it's no big deal. I wouldn't have noticed something like that. But the only thing is my emotions level has increased. I get more emotional over things than I had before. Before I was just like, yeah, whatever. And now it's kind of, ooh, I got to think about it a minute, Things like I'll watch a movie on TV and tears are just bawling out, and that never happened before. Yeah. But other than that, that's the only difference that I've noticed.
Oh, that's so interesting, though. Yeah. Well, thank God that you were able to.
Yeah. I mean, I feel so sorry for the family and everything, but of course. But
I bet they're happy that they were able to, provide that for someone else,
Right.
I know, I think I would be. And, she didn't need it anymore. So
right.
May as well go to good use. And gosh, it seems like you got that pretty quickly.
I did. Well, I'm not O positive. O positive is everybody. So I'm A positive, which opened up the number of possibilities quite a bit. So your blood type matters. If you're O positive, you're open to everything. But
but everybody's competing with you.
Exactly. There's a lot of competition for it. A positive, there wasn't near as much. So it was real quick. I was on the list basically for 4 weeks, really. I did a couple of weeks, and then the pick I had in my arm going in, for meds and all that stuff and testing and all that, it got infected on the metal needle part. So they had to pull that out, put me on antibiotics for a week. When my bloodstream cleared, they put me back on the list, and a week later I had a heart. So
wow. That is amazing. Thank
Pretty
God.
crazy.
Wow, that's wild. And do you feel like that brush with death opened you up more psychically speaking?
It has opened me up a lot
But
more to
you
the
know what I
paranormal.
mean.
Right. It opened me a lot more to the paranormal. I
Yeah.
feel things a lot strongly. Um, I, uh, I have seen things a little bit more often, not much more often, but a little bit more often. And I've heard things a little bit more often. Like if
Hmm.
before I hear things 4 times a year, now I'm hearing it 6 times a year. It's not like a huge increase, but
Yeah.
I notice it more often. After the transplant, and I really got back into investigating and things, I would see flashes, like an instant flash of somebody some spirit I was standing next to.
Hmm.
The best example is at the Corona Public Library during Library Appreciation Week one year. We got invited to come in and do public investigations around Halloween time before that, and then November timeframe during Halloween or Library Appreciation Week. So we would go in. The first time we had to walk around and try to figure out what's going on in the library. And it's been haunted for quite a while. There used to be a park there that bad things have happened at the park in the 1800s, early 1900s. So we're in the library walking around, and there was in the adult nonfiction center. I came around the corner just looking for spirits or anything that I could find. Came around the corner, and I got a flash of a man standing there in a black coat, white shirt with a very thin black tie, pencil thin mustache. His hair was greased back, and he was standing there looking dapper, like he was a business owner. He was something, a professional or something. And I didn't get a name. I didn't get anything, but we started looking, and our historian was very good at finding things. So I described what happened. I described what part of the library it was in, did everything that I could come up with, and gave it to her. And she started investigating the history, and came up with this gentleman who used to be the manager of the fanciest restaurant in Corona and the only bar in Corona. And he was manager of the place, and he used to tell people that he owned it. Well, apparently he didn't own it. The mob did. So he went in and got himself a chest full of buckshot one night, and that's where he died, in that park. So that's the story I got. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But he was one of our best ghosts in the library, because he would sit there and work with you. It was amazing. Just like, okay, so we're here. There's 5 or 6 people around me, and I'm like, okay, let's do the dowsing rods. And I get out my dowsing rods, and I said, where are you standing? And he'd point right at him. I said, can you move to the other aisle? And the dowsing rods would follow him around. He's standing behind the people now, things like that. It was just really interesting watching this. The old flashlight test. You could sit there and ask questions, and he'd turn things on and off. Some people don't like the flashlight test, but I always found it amazing.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
It is to me. I mean, it's just the heat. The heat's heating it up. Well, the thing's not on. How could the heat it up?
Yeah.
And it's an LED. What's it gonna do? So yeah. It's little things like that. So, but yeah, that was really neat. There's some things, but I'll on occasion we'll get this massive flash, and I'll see the person I'm engaging with, and then a lot of times I won't see a thing. So it just all depends.
Yeah. I know you've used a lot of different methods in like the Estes method of communicating. And how do you find that? Do you find that pretty effective?
It's interesting.
Maybe for those who don't know what it is, if you could describe it.
The Estes method was actually developed, I think it was up in Estes Park, Colorado. There was a guy up there I saw an interview with a while back, and he invented this method at what's the big hotel up in Estes Park? I can't remember it right now.
Oh gosh.
Stanley.
Yeah,
Hotel
the Stanley.
Yeah. So it was up there, and basically you put somebody in blindfold, headphones, and the headphones are, you've either got an SB7, something like that hooked up to it, or a white noise generator without all the radio interference and things, something like that. So it's white noise, static in your headphones, loud enough so that they can't hear what you're saying outside. They're just sitting there like this with a blindfold on, listening for words. And their job is to listen to the words that are coming in and say the words that they hear. So it could be
just blurt them out as they hear them.
Just say them, because everybody else outside around them is asking questions. So,
but the person with the headphones cannot hear the questions.
Right, exactly. That's the whole purpose of turning it up a little bit loud, making it static, so they can't hear what we're saying. So we're outside going, what year is it to you? Are there any spirits in here? How many spirits are there? Just all sorts of whatever you come up with, your standard normal questions that you come up with, and try to fit the situation. Did you know Mr. Stanley? Did you do this? Whatever, try to get things. And then you're listening to what that person is saying. Of course, it's all being recorded, so you can look at it later. But that's really cool. And the Estes method, I think, is really pretty neat. It doesn't always work. I mean, there are some times when the person just keeps going dark, moon, that's what they hear, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the questions that you're asking.
Right.
So sometimes it doesn't work. And then sometimes, by golly, it's spot on.
Yeah.
It is like the questions that you're asking are being answered by whomever. And it's really neat. And then you do 2 or 3 people through that session, and you start comparing what they're saying. What are the answers? Do they seem to match most of the time? What's going on? So sometimes it's a really great method for doing things. And I'm very much into experimentation. So I'll experiment with anything that comes along and see what I think of it.
Sure.
I've been doing this since 1987, so it's been a few years anyway.
Yeah.
So I like to experiment.
I worked on this big live stream event that was during COVID because, there was no television production. Nothing was going on because nobody could be with anybody. So we did these really big live stream events. Like the first one we did was at the that Rhode Island farm that was the Conjuring House. And, we just had them set up cameras everywhere. And then the family was there, and we filmed. We live streamed 24 hours a day. And so we would present sort of a program of, either people talking, or we were showing testing being done until around midnight. And then, we would go to sleep, but people around the world would still be monitoring the cameras. And when we would get up the next day, they would say, oh, wait, here's this, clip, here's this shot I got. And it was a lot of fun. But we did one at the Lizzie Borden house, and then we did one on the Queen Mary for Halloween that year. And particularly at the Queen Mary, I noticed on the Estes method, how crazy it was that what the people were saying really matched up with the questions that were being asked. And it was just incredible. There was no way it could have been a coincidence. It was too, it was not general stuff at all. It was too detailed. And so I found that really interesting. And I would love to, I've never done it myself, but I'd love to do it. But we were just filming it being done. but I think that would be a fun thing to try out. You really need those canceling earphones, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a number of sets of those for doing kind of things like that, but they're all back in the States at my brother's house or in storage. And I need to fly back over there and grab all that stuff and bring it back. So maybe I'll do that, or I'll have my brother ship them, one of the two. But
yeah, or get one of them to come home and bring it.
Well, that would be good. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I was at, we did a experiment at a little town in California up by the Nevada-California border. And so RJ Murphy of Murphy Paranormal invited me and my team and things like that to come up, and we did this investigation this one time, and we had a great time. It was really wonderful, and we were going to go investigate all the different buildings that we actually had access to. So we went and did that, and a storm blew through. So there was energy in the air all over the place. So it was really active, a lot of fun. So we did that one. And next time on Rob's birthday, RJ's birthday, we went in to do this one house, the very last house in this town along the railroad tracks. And apparently it had been rented out by a family several years before. The kid he was 18, 19, 20 years old, something like that. And he had a lot of issues. He used to write music on his computer, and he would write the electronica type music. And it was really cool. The beat and everything was going on. I'll tell you why I know it was really cool in a minute. So we're all sitting here, and he basically died in the hospital down in San Bernardino, and overdose, I believe is what it was, overdose of something. And he had like medical issues. He was taking all sorts of pills, and he wound up dying down in the hospital. But before that, his parents had said, we're going away. We'll keep the house rented. You could stay right here, etc. So he did. And his name was Zach. And Zach had his room in the house. It was sort of toward the back area of the house. And we went to rent, we got there to do this investigation. So there were quite a few of us there. And RJ and I he had his camera, and I had my dowsing rods, and we had a REM pod sitting there. And I'd sit in there and I'd go, okay, hey, Zach, I know you like electronic music and stuff. Why don't you try this one out? And I sit here and do a couple of beats, put my fingers on the antenna, and I move them away and make changes in the pitch. And RJ's filming me all the time. And I'm trying to come up with this. And I stood back a little while. We were talking about maybe going and see if there's any more food at the barbecue or outside, because we had a barbecue going at the same time. And all of a sudden, the REM pod started going off. And I'm not saying it's going like that, but it started and pretty soon there was music playing. And RJ's sitting here filming this thing all the way through. I'm standing here going, oh my God, this is so cool. And we sat there the whole time until the batteries in the REM pod died. And it was only about a half hour or so, because they had been in there for a while. But for that half hour, we're sitting here watching the lights flashing and the music coming out of this thing. And apparently that kid was playing the REM pod very, very well. It sounded cool. But yeah, that's some of the experiments that you can do. If you just find out who's supposed to be in that house or that area that you're with, and try to do experiments with it. We did an old folks home. It wasn't actually an old folks home. It was a civic center for older people. And we did a civic center, and there was one room where they used to gather. And in the old days, before it got turned into some other government building. So we're in this little section, and they used to dance in there. So we're like, okay, this is cool. So we brought up some 30s, 40s dance music, and we were playing, on a couple of speakers, and we were playing this music, and it was just loud enough that it was just like in a ballroom. And pretty soon it felt like you were surrounded by people. I mean, there were only 6 of us in the room, but it felt shoulder to shoulder. Everybody was in there and everybody was moving around, and it was the most amazing thing. It's just great. Love that place. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. It's just you've got to tweak your experiments to the place that you're at.
Right. Understand, and even the, like you said, the 30s and 40s, if you'd have gone in there and played, metal, headbanger music, it wouldn't have spoken.
Got anything out of it. Yeah. There. So we did 30s and 40s. We could have done 20s, 30s and 40s, but we figured 30s and 40s would do it. The old big band stuff. That was awesome. It was very good.
Well, we're down to the end of the show. It went by so fast, and I really appreciate you coming on. And we're going to be meeting up this week at a particular place that we've nicknamed the Devil Church. And I wanted Joe to go and check it out with our group, because it has some very strange symbology and very weird vibes in that place. And the last time I tried to go there, I actually had an accident and fell right in front of the church and broke my face, and had the pompiers had to come, the paramedics, and take care of me and everything. So we all decided, no, we're not going in, but we're going in this time, and we're going to have our deliverance guy with us, Joe. Well, we may have to come back on and tell the story. We'll see what happens.
Should be interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It should be. Thanks again, Joe. And thanks to everybody for listening. Good night.
See ya. See you soon.
Bye.